Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. This week we're doing a creature profile. I love doing the creature profiles because I love talking about all these different creatures and how I use them. And once again, we're still in the serpent category of the night predators, although we'll be winding that up soon. I missed talking about Skillet on the previous video, so on the next one, where I talk about the Tatzelwurm, I'll fit her in there because the Tatzelwurm's quite a small one, but still interesting, especially because that's linked to the book I've got coming out in December. But yeah, so as always, I'll be doing a quote from the story that one of these creatures has turned up in or is mentioned in, and then I'll give you the sources, the background information, like the folk tales and stuff about these creatures. And then I'll give you a species profile, which is about my interpretation of them within the Veil. And of course, all the Veil things, the Beyond the Veil idea, is my paranormal romance story. So there's some interesting things that happen. But anyway, we're doing about the worms, the Lindwurms. So let's get started. Wait, I thought Lindwurms or worms were all the curse of this area in the Veil. They swarmed here and this was like their massive nest in the mountains. Aren't they all supposed to sit on great hoards of treasure and devour anyone who comes to get them? What makes this Calyx a prince amongst them? Quote from the Patient Viper. This is a bit of a long or maybe average-sized piece about the other dragon-like beings that are part of the snake category, mainly because they are described as serpents and in the Veil they are not demons but Veillanders. Now, I've separated the Tatzelwurm from this group because they're a separate species that has a much nastier reputation in the Veil. But amongst the Lindwurms or worms, you can spell and say that any way you would like, including Lindwurm, Prince Lindwurm, Wyvern, Basilisk, and Cockatrice, whom we'll talk about. Because the worm is a Nordic word, but also Lindwurm we more hear as associated with an Austrian thing. The W is sometimes pronounced more like a V, so you hear me go verm rather than worm. Okay? Or orm is another form of it. Anyway, why are these all together? Well, these are the beings in the Veil that are serpentine, but have less than 2 legs and wings are debatable. They are all linked by poisonous breath and odours, but also have magical abilities and origins that make them very separate from other creatures. Now, Ouroboros and Amphisbaena are not within this category because they are curiously not considered a part of it, as the Amphisbaena is counted amongst the chimeras of the Veil, and the Ouroboros is linked with a particular sea serpent. Tail in the mouth, if you know Nordic, you'll know. So we'll start off first talking about the easiest subjects of the Basilisk and the Cockatrice. 2 interchangeable species that basically trying to find a difference is much more than name and image is often difficult. Firstly, the Basilisk means king lizard, or rather little king, and Cockatrice, well, that's up to the debate. We'll discuss the Cockatrice first because it's much more simple. Basically, it is thought, like the Basilisk it is linked to have been born from the egg of a cockerel, although toad hatching is optional with this creature. It is said to come out as either a snake with the comb of a rooster, or more commonly the Wyvern-like winged 2-legged reptile with the head of a cockerel. In heraldry, it's often depicted in this manner, and it only appears from the 4th century on. Often more in poetry, and in one translation of the Bible it is mentioned. The Cockatrice is said to kill by glaring, touching, or even breathing on a person, and yet it will die at hearing the cry of a rooster, or upon seeing its own reflection in the mirror. The best example of a Cockatrice image would be the insignia of the Free Fighter Squadron of the RAF. Now, I learnt of this being from the same book I learnt about griffins from as a kid. And curiously, the image of the beast in this was that of the serpent with a comb and wattle, no wings, and something that just exuded poison from its very being. But this is where the link to the Basilisk comes in, and it's anyone's guess what that's about. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone met the Basilisk in literature or film by now. It's often titled the King of Serpents, and is said to kill with a single glance. It was first described by Pliny the Elder, stating it was a snake no more than 12 fingers in length. but so venomous and with such a deadly gaze it leaves a trail of death behind it. It is said its weakness is the odour of a weasel, but already you're probably thinking the same as most that this could describe a cobra and the weasel a mongoose. Indeed, some tend to think that this might be what was being described by Pliny initially. However, it's the creation of the basilisk that gets awkward. In Cantabrian mythology, the basilisk is said to be born when an old rooster starts acting weird and decides to startle everyone by laying an egg. This happens just before the cock dies, exactly laid at midnight on a clear night with a full moon. Debatably, the soft eggshell is then either sat upon by a toad that hatches it out, or it comes away and the fully grown basilisk slips out of it. If its parent isn't dead yet, it might look at it, see its eyes for the first time, and then suddenly will drop dead. Some say it is a reptile with legs, bears the cock's comb, beak, and a fiery set of eyes. But later interpretations have it as a comb serpent, or as its name is meant to suggest, a snake with a natural mitre or crown-shaped crest on its head, which weirdly makes me think of is it a Cryolophosaurus with the crest bit on its head? Yeah, for some weird reason that's what it makes me think of, though, on a snake. Some believe this is what separates it from the cockatrice. Of course, some stories have them as separate because the egg is laid by a serpent or a toad and then hatched by the old cockerel. It can be very confusing like this. It's also thought that the basilisk only developed the cockerel comb and features from the medieval period onwards, where it features in literature sometimes translated into cockatrice or vice versa. It can be very confusing with these two beings, especially when the basilisk produces a poisonous or venomous breath and scorches the ground where it goes, but that it can also be different because where the cockatrice has two methods to kill it, the basilisk is only killed by hearing cock crowing. It is thought too that this is why travellers in the regions it is found travel with the cockerel, although that's probably just a random story. And I've looked into other species that have a similar sort of thing of being a snake with a crest that leave death in their wake, or even a worm-like creature that does that. There's quite a few things very similar to the basilisk and cockatrice. Now, this is how they are within the Vale, so I'm going to give you their quick species profile and then we'll move on to the worms. So, side, neutral, created by demon possession of roosters to lay eggs or hatch them. Created for pure mischief, created when? After the development of the Vale. Physical description. Though they rarely take human form, and when they do, they're often forced to wear glasses, contact lenses, or to bind their eyes. A cockatrice is more common, and they appear in their form as winged, with the head of a cockerel and the legs and tail of a dragon. The basilisk is rarer and appears as a large snake that has a crest upon its forehead. Abilities. The cockatrice and the basilisk both have the ability to command all reptiles around them. They produce a venomous breath and their glare can kill anything dead. The basilisk in particular also has the ability to control all other members of the serpent community when it rears up and summons them. Most known for piercing gaze. Weakness. The cockatrice can be killed by its own reflection as well as the crowing of a cockerel at dawn. The basilisk can only be killed by the crowing of a cockerel at dawn that is able to get close enough for it to crow without being killed by its breath first. However, if one can stand the poisonous breath and avoid the gaze with a distraction, both beings can be killed if you spear them. Number. Very rare. They are thought to only be about 200 cockatrice and about 20 basilisk. Well-known beings, there are stories about them, but they are never named, although it was once said that the first Count Vilmor kept Basilisk to guard his bed during the daytime. Characters and stories, none so far. So, now we're going to discuss the Wyvern very quickly. Yes, I did say we were going to discuss the worms first, but I'm just shoving the Wyvern in here too. Okay, it will only be a quick talk, as the Wyvern is more well known as a heraldic beast. Some refer to it as just a two-legged dragon, and it often appears to be in the pose of a prancing cockerel, but is a dragon. This being is unlike dragons in only having two legs, always having wings, and rarely breathing fire. The name is thought to be linked to a word for viper or adder, or possibly a link to javelin. It is seen often within fiction these days, but there does not seem to be any specific legends about the beast bar heraldic symbolism. Alongside the wyvern is the guiver. I'm not too sure about pronouncing that French word, I'm afraid. Thought to be the same as the wyvern, though French described with a long serpentine body and dragon's head and occasionally hind feet, though they are not always visible. They are unique for having horns as part of their description, very aggressive, living near small bodies of water, and scared of naked humans, for some reason. Although these beings are counted in the Worm group in the Vale, they have never been known to take on a human form, although they can often communicate well. So here's what they're like in the Vale. Side, dark, created by Lindwurms that wanted nothing to do with humans. Created for sea Lindwurms. Created during the time of the dragon demons. Physical description. They are often winged, two-legged, dragon-like beings that are small at about the size of an emperor penguin, and often flashy colours, with red very common. With some have horns on their head, or their two legs not in the position of the hip but at the chest. They're a little odd like that. Abilities. They can fly, give a venomous bite, slash with vicious claws, and generally tend to kill and kidnap livestock and children to eat. Most known for being two-legged dragons, though they're not dragons. Weaknesses. They're scared of humans that are pure of heart because their demonic heraldry means they don't know if they can actually attack the human. Number. There's actually a hefty quantity, with several in nature reserves in the Vale, so it's thought to be around 200,000 or so. They're sort of like, I'd say, like the fox in most nature reserves. There's always one or two there that you know will be there and that are eating things, but you don't necessarily get to see them. Well-known beings. There's a popular one that's been hand-raised and watched on the Vale internet for years. He's well known for his silly antics playing with all sorts. Characters and stories? None currently. Now the truly hefty parts. The verms, or worms. Most commonly we hear of the Lindwurm, but what are they? Well, it's questionable whether the translation of this meaning flexible snake perhaps is regarding a serpent or a dragon. Certainly verms in most Scandinavian stories are also called dragons, like the Nidhogg. But the verms we're talking about are a mix of the livestock devouring dragons and the hoarding ones. In fact, Lindwurms are said to have an ability to double whatever they lie on, and to hoard food and gold to make their hoards bigger and bigger as they grow. But the first time I heard of a verm was the story of the Lambton-worm. I don't know if it's well known outside of the UK, or if it's just certain parts of the UK it's known, but I'll tell you the story as I was told it. So, young John Lambton was fishing on a Sunday instead of going to church, and is warned nothing good will come from it. But he fishes a baby worm, no bigger than a thumb, that looks like either a lamprey or more like a serpent, and to dispose of it, he drops it into a well. Some say he then went on to join the Crusades, forgetting the worm which was growing in the well and poisoning it, before sneaking out to devour livestock at night. Eventually it gets so big it can't sit in the well and wraps itself around a big hill. The villagers go to chop it up, but its chopped parts connect back together, and even when knights are sent to kill it, the angry worm hooks up trees with their tails and swats people away with them, which I love. Finally, though, Lambton returns and knows he has to deal with it. He is told by a witch the only way to fight it is to wear armour covered in spearheads and within the river. He does so, but he's warned to prevent a curse falling upon the next 9 generations of his family. He has to then kill the first living thing he sees, so he arranges to have his best hunting dog released to him. Lambton fights the worm. It tries to crush him, but it's slashed to pieces on the spearheads. Yet, the river rushes the pieces away so fast they cannot reconnect, and Lambton wins. But his father does not release the dog as he was supposed to, and instead goes to see his son himself. But Lambton can't kill his father, and so he is cursed. Now, verms are these beings that are serpentine but cause the kind of trouble a dragon might, only they are always described as serpentine. But legends say there are 2 kinds of Lindwurms. Good ones associated with good luck that are also thought to be princes cursed into the form, and we'll discuss the King Lindwurm in a moment. However, there's also the bad types that are man-eaters and apparently hold their tail in their mouth to roll like a wheel after humans. Just like the Wyvern that's related to them, they're said to be highly aggressive, and yet the most famous Lindwurm is the one in Klagenfurt. This has its own fountain and was based around a seeming dragon bone found that later turned out to be from a woolly rhino, but it's certainly an interesting Lindwurm, and unlike others, it's got 4 legs and wings, whereas the Lindwurm is not often winged and more thought to be similar to an anaconda in hunting underwater. In Sweden, the Lindwurm can sometimes have a mane and lives deep in the forest, dark in colour with lighter undersides, and lay their eggs under the bark of linden trees, hence its name. In fact, in Sweden, they were actually counted as a possible cryptozoological creature until 1884, when money was offered for a specimen, but nothing ever came forward. In Central Europe, they're more draconic, like the Klagenfurt being, which apparently was causing flooding, and so a bull was chained up to lure it out before the worm got snagged swallowing it, only to be speared. Some artistic depictions of the dragon and George has the dragon as a Lindwurm. Knuckers are a Sussex name for the beast and somewhat linked towards the story of Beowulf or the Lambton worm, as I spoke of earlier. However, there is said to be a white worm, something that brings good luck. The most interesting is the King or Prince Lindwurm, a serpent that is married to either a princess or a beautiful girl. Lindwurms seem not to harm women. Now, the King Lindwurm is said to be as one of twins to a queen, who apparently was childless until she followed advice to eat 2 onions. However, she did not peel the first onion, and that caused the first child born to be a Lindwurm, but the second one is a perfect human. Then when they grow up, the younger goes to find a bride, and so the Lindwurm asks his mother for a bride before his younger brother can marry. But none of the maidens like him, so he eats them, until a shepherd's daughter appears wearing every dress she owns. Apparently she's spoken to the same crone to have advised the queen. He tells her to take off her clothes, but she insists for each layer she sheds, he shed a layer of skin, until finally, as she reaches her last dress, he loses his last skin and reveals the handsome human prince beneath. Now, there's a lot of stories about the serpent that changes to a human for falling for a woman, or instead is a charmed serpent that is one of the most curious of the Lindwurm groups. In the Vale, Lindwurms are not thought of badly. In fact, they are often seen as good luck and work regularly around money for companies because their good luck can increase profits. The princes also occur every now and again, and this is how they are in the Vale. Side neutral, created by the dragon demons bred with other Valelanders. Created for pure mischief. Created when? During the time of the demon dragons. Physical description. Often giant serpentine beings, sometimes with 2 limbs or wings. They can speak to humans with ease, can be so large they can eat anything and take the form of a human only to appease the beings they fall in love with and wish to shower in gold, though many in the Vale live in human form. Abilities. Anything they lie upon doubles in size, so the bigger the worm gets, the greater the horde. They have remarkable healing abilities so long as they can reach their limbs. They can also bind themselves into a ball or wheel to chase prey. They can speak to humans and seduce them too, in order to gain more gems or food. They can also grow so big that where they choose to rest can redirect rivers and cause floods. A prince Lindwurm is created when a Lindwurm or its relative produces twins. One is trapped within the serpentine form until it meets someone it falls for, who has to trick it to shed as many skins as she may shed, or remove clothing or items from her body. If her love is true, a handsome prince will be beneath with a precious gem, and if not, a winged Lindwurm that will devour them. Genders vary in the species, of course, and what they react to. And the second child, born from those twins, will be just human. Most known for the Prince Lindwurms. Weaknesses: they are very gluttonous beings, and if their parts are thrown into fire or a river and are unable to reconnect, they will die. A Lindwurm will shed its skin yearly and get bigger. When it sheds, its flesh is vulnerable and easy to spear. Number: there are about 3,000 Lindwurms, a good 1,000 that call themselves Knucker, These are the Lindwurms that don't take human form to live in the Vale. And about 100 Prince Lindwurm. Well-known beings, Calyx the supermodel. Each season when they shed their skin, the colours of the skin denote the Vale's popular colours for that season. And Calyx designs clothing that the serpent will wear, and he is a Prince Lindwurm. Characters and stories. So far I'm thinking about Calyx stepping into one, but we shall see. I know he will step into one story, but I don't know if he'll have his own one currently. That's still a thought. Final comments. As I said at the start, sorry I missed Skilla from the Lamia section, so she'll be added to next month's Tatzelwurm, and of course, the Tatzelwurm is a member of the worm group generally, but in the Vale they are different, and certainly not like... Sorry, this one was very long as well, but thank you for listening, and if you want to read my paranormal romance that's in the Vale universe, or you want to hear these a month in advance, please check out my Patreon. And of course, thanks to all my patrons for sponsoring me. Bye.